Hi,
How's it going?
pretty good.
How was DC?
It was good.
Yeah?
I was in DC and Baltimore. Went to the African American Historic Museum. It was amazing.
Yeah, I've heard it's so cool. You did a good job.
Hey,
Hello.
how are you?
Good, how are you doing?
Good, thank you.
Do you want an email? I like your contrast.
Do I want an email? Sure. Hey,
Yeah, we got a last minute.
oh,
Oh,
okay.
there's two of them? Mm-hmm. Wait, which one from before? The same guy?
This is from this morning. The other one is this one. And Daniel. Oh, wait. I give you two. This one's from Alexander.
Oh, what's Alexander? Oh, okay. Oh, this guy.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Do you want to keep it for your reference?
No, it's okay. I mean, I guess we have to.
Yeah.
Go get the guy now back. Very active this morning.
Hi, how are you? Good.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you as well. Okay. I'll leave for Steve. She'll make no. She'll make a copy. Yeah.
Brilliant that we're not having the meeting tomorrow night.
I know.
I actually thought, I don't know, I had in my head that it was tomorrow night, and I looked on the agenda, and said, wait a minute, it's tonight.
Can you imagine?
Right, so I
That
was,
would have been a little boo-boo if you showed up tomorrow instead of today.
no, that would be terrible.
But do you put it on your calendar? Does your I
The
set my
problem
alarms
is-
to let me know.
The problem is that when they send an invite, they don't really send, it doesn't
No.
really accept,
I
it
do
doesn't
my
work.
own.
So I did my own, and for some reason or another, I put it on Wednesday. I looked at the agenda, so I was well in advance, so I
Weren't
knew
you
it was
going on
going
a
on.
trip or something?
Well, let's see, I
This was
went to
last time?
Jamaica for a wedding,
Ah,
which was very nice. Stayed at a beautiful resort in Montego Bay called Half Moon Bay.
okay.
Lovely.
Great. It's like an all-inclusive.
Yeah, but it was, we were there for a wedding, so that's where the wedding party was staying. It's not all inclusive. Everything was a la carte. Everything was very expensive.
Yeah, they figure you're an American. That's
Right. And then I was just in D.C. and Baltimore, where my family's from, and went to the African American Historic Museum, which, if you ever get a chance to go to Washington, it's an amazing.
Yeah.
do this. Hey, Jill.
We're going? Was it previous to the last? No, I don't think we had one because of the COVID. Yeah, exactly. And then previously was like an orange notebook that we had.
Yes.
So, yeah, it's a beach blanket.
It's just funny. One second. And I should have said something because I umbrella. I looked at it and I said, okay, maybe it's in there. Hold the car on it.
Yeah.
I know.
4 in 1 week. I'm like,
Let me set this up and I'm going to take your thing.
okay. Let's see here. I got Withers. My God.
This is not good.
What's wrong?
I don't know.
The umbrella?
There we go. The umbrella? It wouldn't start?
It was tired.
It was.
I had a-
They're always tired.
I was a little tired and I needed to.
Okay, let's get this. Let me set myself up a little bit.
Jill, we're not having a meeting on the 14th as well, are we? That's canceled, okay.
So we only have one meeting, right?
Is this one correct?
You have a copy of the agenda.
Yeah, there's no names there as you can see. Those were removed. I know.
How are you doing?
Long time no see.
Yeah, today was morning, noon, and night, literally. Hace años que no la ves. Looking sharp, huh? Is that it?
What thing is canceled? didn't, I just deleted it. I don't know why it showed up on yours. Right.
I've never seen him get heated. And today was on the phone getting heated because he's such a nice guy. But I really like him. I still get grandkids from me. Every time I have to meet him, we get a comedian. Oh, where did you go? I'm good boy. Call me. No, I'm not kidding you. Because I'm in love again. You went to sleep with
Is everything okay? For the PowerPoint presentation, did she give it to you?
They gave me two, let me check if they sent another one.
Well, she was up there actually.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, no. Same, Gainesville, new area that's being, yeah. Go back and- Victoria, yeah, sure. How are you? Is that good? Right, it's probably about half. Everything? So, yeah, I was surprised by that one too. Hey, Robert, how are you? Good to see you. Because, like, in quick succession, they were asking us for the checks for both of them. So something tells me either you told them something or somebody, you know, they said we got to get in here and start doing it. The initial methodology meeting, perfect. 93.
Delayed until school starts.
I guess for either of them. It's not gonna stop.
They put a,
No, I think they still take, like, take
Oh, really?
to the summer.
These projects I bring in. What are you talking about? He gets all the big ones.
I can't give you my hand, but
Don't worry, bro.
I know that they put like
Jill is the longest serving member of the planning department. And I was not there.
they're gonna like flash the actual season. So we got that there.
We got quorum.
All right. Should we,
Can we take 5 minutes? We have a glitch with the court reporter, and I need to check something.
oh, there's no court reporter. Okay.
I'll make a motion to
That I can take fast.
We'll get a court
You know what? They probably thought it was Wednesday.
Could be.
They're gonna show up tomorrow.
Is that an issue? That is an issue. Because, no, test.
So the court reporter had the wrong date. Still not coming through? I got to be like right on top of it, right? Okay, the court reporter had the wrong date. She is going to appear by Zoom. I've consulted with the city attorney on this, and we're clear. She's going to appear by Zoom. She will swear in the witnesses. She will take the testimony via Zoom. We just need everybody to go slow and speak clearly, and only one person at a time. So we need to just take extra care, because if more than one person speaks, it's going to cut out on the sound.
Now, there's also a recording that's done of the meetings.
There is a recording, but because this is a quasi-judicial proceeding, it's required that it be recorded and that the witnesses be sworn in. Fortunately, it doesn't look like we have a lot of people here tonight, so that might make it a little bit easier from that perspective. So we're going to wait until she gets in, and hopefully we can get her to appear on the screen for us.
Okay, so we figure about 10 minutes?
Hopefully less.
Yes, let's take 5, take 10. Okay.
Thank you.
Could have.
did say 10 minutes, but is everybody that was is here tonight to speak in the room, or did anybody walk out?
Some people did walk out, but I know the microphone does reach outside. We are going to be starting soon. Oh, perfect. She's going. Jill, we have the court reporter on. Are we able to put her on the screen?
We need her mostly on the screen to swear in the witnesses. As long as we know she's there and she's
I just
taking
want
the
to see
thing.
her to make sure she's there.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
I don't know if you can hear me, but I am here.
Okay, thank you. Do you have video that you can?
Yes, I do.
Okay, perfect.
Okay,
How are
she's
you?
on. Jennifer.
Okay, great. Thank you. Gentlemen, I'd like to go ahead and call the meeting to order.
Excuse me.
Thank you. I'd like to go ahead and call the meeting to order. I'd like to ask everybody to please silence your phones, and anybody that still has a beeper to do so also. Thank you. Good evening. This board is comprised of 7 members. 4 members of the board shall constitute a quorum, and the affirmative vote of 4 members shall be necessary for the adoption of any motion. If only 4 members of the board are present, an applicant may request and be entitled to a continuance to the next regularly scheduled meeting of the board. If a matter is continued due to a lack of quorum, the chairperson or secretary of the board may set a special meeting to consider such matter. In the event that 4 votes are not attained, an applicant, except in the case of a comprehensive plan amendment, may request a continuance or allow the application to proceed to the city commission without a recommendation. Pursuant to resolution number 2021-118, the city of Coral Gables has returned to traditional in-person meetings. However, the Planning and Zoning Board has established the ability for the public to provide comments virtually. For those members of the public who are appearing on Zoom and wish to testify, you must be visible to the court reporter to be sworn in. Otherwise, if you speak without being sworn in, your comment may not have evidentiary value. Lobbyist registration and disclosure. Any person who acts as a lobbyist must register with the city clerk as required pursuant to city code. As chair, I now officially call the City of Coral Gables Planning and Zoning Board meeting of June 6, 2023 to order. The time is 6:09. Jill, will you please call the roll?
Robert Behar.
Here.
Claudia Miró. Julio Gabriel.
Here.
Luis Revolta. Benny Torre.
Here.
Chip Withers. Here. A.B. Eisenstadt.
Here. Notice regarding ex parte communications. Please be advised that this board is a quasi-judicial board, which requires board members to disclose all ex parte communication and site visits. An ex parte communication is defined as any contact, communication, conversation, correspondence, memorandum, or other written or verbal communication that takes place outside a public hearing between a member of the public and the member of the quasi-judicial board regarding matters to be heard by the board. If anyone made any contact with a board member regarding an issue before the board member must state on the record the existence of the ex parte communication and the party who originated the communication. Also, if a board member conducted a site visit specifically related to the case before the board member must also disclose such visit. In either case, the board member must state on the record whether the ex parte communication and/or site visit will affect the board member's ability to impartially consider the evidence to be presented regarding the matter. The board member should also state that his or her decision will be based on substantial competent evidence and testimony presented on the record today. Does any member of the board have such a communication and/or site visit to disclose at this time?
No.
No? Swearing in. Everyone who speaks this evening must complete the roster on the podium. We ask that you print clearly so the official records of your name and address will be correct. Now, with the exception of attorneys, all persons physically in the City Commission chamber who will speak on agenda items before us this evening, please rise to be sworn in. And I'd like to make a note that the court reporter is via Zoom, so I ask for everybody's patience during this process. Everybody raise your right hand, please.
Do you all swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give should be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Thank you. Zoom platform participants. I will ask any person wishing to speak on tonight's agenda item to please open your chat and send a direct message to Jill Menendez, stating you would like to speak before the board and include your full name. Jill will call you when it's your turn. I ask you to be concise for the interest of time. Phone platform participants. After Zoom platform participants are done, I will ask phone participants to comment on tonight's agenda items. I also ask you to be concise for the interest of time. First, we have the approval of the minutes from April 4th, 2023.
Motion to approve?
We have a motion to approve.
Second.
We have a second by Julio. Any comments? No. Call the roll, please.
Julio Gabriel,
Yes.
Benny Torre,
Yes.
Chip Withers,
Yes.
Robert Behar,
Yes.
A.B. Eisenstadt.
Yes. The procedure we'll use tonight. First, we'll have the identification of agenda item by Mr. Caller. Then we'll have the presentation by the applicant, followed by the presentation by staff. I'll go ahead and open it for public comment, first in chamber, then Zoom participants and phone line participants. Afterwards, I'll go ahead and close the public comment. We'll have a board discussion, motion, further discussion if needed, and a second of a motion. We'll have board's final comments and a vote if necessary. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, before we start, two of the board members not here. Was any request for absentee waiver for them?
Jill?
Mr. Revolta was advised of the meeting via email and a phone call. He never confirmed, and Ms. Claudia Miro had to attend another commission meeting.
Okay. Thank you. So there's no excuse, absent request.
Is that correct, Mr. Attorney?
Well, I believe it was indicated that Jill said there was a conflict by one of the members who indicated to Jill that she could not attend tonight because she was conflicted with another meeting so I will take that as a request for an
But it's-
excused absence. I don't know about the other.
But what type of
member.
meeting was that? A city meeting or?
Do we know what meeting it was?
South Miami City Commission meeting.
Okay. Maybe we can see what qualifies or doesn't qualify. I think.
Just to give them the benefit since they're not here.
Okay. Are we ready to read E1?
Yes, Mr. Collins?
Item E1, a resolution of the City Commission of Coral Gables, Florida, granting remote parking conditional use approval pursuant to Article 14, Process Section 14-203, conditional uses for the proposed remote parking associated with the commercial project referred to as 93 Miracle Mile on property legally described as lots 28 through 30, Block 39, Section L, 87 Coral Way, Coral Gables, Florida, including required conditions providing for repeal of provision, severability clause, and an effective date. Item E1, public hearing.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the board. Mario Garcia Serra with offices at 600 Brickell Avenue. Here today representing 93 Coral Gables MM LLC, the owner of the property located at 93 Miracle Mile, which is also known as 87 Coral Way. I am joined today by Mr. Bernardo Ford Brescia, our project architect, the founder of the Arquitectonica architectural firm. And I will first provide some background information, and then Bernardo will present the project. This is in several ways a very innovative project. Back in 2021, the City Commission went through great effort to adopt new zoning regulations for Miracle Mile. You will remember this board reviewed those regulations. And the intent of those regulations was to preserve Miracle Mile's scale and to protect it from the impact of parking garage pedestals. And this project is the first project proposed pursuant to these new regulations. It is also 100% in compliance with those regulations. The only approval which we are requesting today is the one which we are required to obtain by these regulations, which is to park remotely. This project, and if we could please bring up the presentation now. This project is also innovative and forward-looking in that it will be the first carbon-neutral mixed-use building in the state of Florida. This building is as green as a commercial building can reasonably be. It will have photovoltaic glass to harness solar energy, a high-tech battery system to collect and store energy to operate building systems, and new air conditioning technology that uses 30% of the energy used by a standard HVAC system. I'm not sure if you can. No, Jill's trying to get up the presentation. I'll continue in the meantime. Oh, here we go. There you go, the initial slide of the presentation. Now I'll orient you a little bit with regards to the project site. It is a little over 10,000 square feet and is located on the northeast corner of Miracle Mile and Galliano Street. It is zoned MX2 and is located within the Miracle Mile overlay. As mentioned before, the project fully complies with the applicable zoning, and we are only seeking the approval of remote parking, which is required by the same regulations. Next slide, please. While the existing building has served the community well, and here you see some images of the site, it is time for a more functional building which better serves this community. We are proposing a new 4-story building, which will include restaurant, retail, and office space, as well as a rooftop deck, which is limited in size and for the exclusive use of the office tenant. The parking spaces for this new building will be provided very nearby to the immediate north in the parking garage of the 10 Aragon building, which you see indicated there on the screen. Again, we need to park remotely because of this section of the code, section 2-402B4, which specifically says that parking garages are prohibited on Miracle Mile and that we must park remotely. With that said, I'll now hand it over to Bernardo to walk you through the project and present it.
Good afternoon.
Welcome. If you could please state your name
I'm
and
Bernardo Ford Brescia. I'm the principal of Arquitectonica,
with your address, please.
2900 Oak Avenue, Coconut Grove.
Could you enunciate your last name because I don't
Ford
know.
Brescia.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yes. The image shows you the content of the ground floor. You can see in pink the ground level retail, most likely a food and beverage user. And you see the unique arrangement where there's an entrance, where there's an elevator and escalator, because the levels above us, above this ground floor, are also a retail user. Retail user that goes up for 2 levels. And you see to the right on Galliano, a patio, an outdoor dining patio, and a porch leading to a private elevator lobby. One of those elevators is double doored for reasons in case the main elevator breaks down. But one of them is a service elevator that opens out to the service alley. And the rest of the spaces are
support mechanical space for the building and the trash room that is intended to be enclosed. It is, if you look at the next level, I don't know who controls, or do I? I do, right? Here, this one here. That explains what I mentioned, that there is an escalator that goes up as well as an elevator into this level. And of course, the service elevator opens to this floor. In the rear area, there will be the support space for the retail user. And likewise on the next level. So this is essentially a retail building until you get to the top floor, the fourth level. The fourth level is an office space for a single user. It's a corporate headquarters for the owner of the building. It's a courtyard, and you see in the middle, because that's a blank wall against the next door neighbor, brings light into the inner part of the building. And eventually it goes to a private garden on the roof where the owner has a botanical interest in that, and will have this garden on the roof. It's an orchid garden. From those beams, the orchids will be hanging. And there's a small terrace over to one side that he will use for his own personal use. It is the essence of the project. You see it here in the section where you see the mechanical in the back, and the levels of retail, and the office space, and the courtyard on the rooftop. You can see here another section of the same explanation of the project with the courtyard, the roof terrace, and the office. Here is the front of the building. The building is done in a keystone and frames that are in bronze, that are box frames that frame these series of windows. There's a series of cornice lines from the neighborhood that are picked up by some of those horizontals. The rooftop is the height of the eave of the next door building, as you can see. And some of the lines that you see carrying across are matching some of the surrounding buildings. The building is a series of windows that are playful. They have a composition that engage the rooftop and the ground floor. In the middle floors, so sometimes double height, sometimes single height. The same view as you turn the corner, the building, within that framework of a facade are the recessed porches into the building, and again, engaging the rooftop garden in the manner that you've seen in the floor plan and in the front elevation. There are different scales because there are different scales around the neighborhood. In fact, even though this building is, of course, a more contemporary interpretation, even though it's using materials that are regional. You can see, for example, in the back, there's some double height, single height compositions where the cornice lines are. By putting a rooftop garden, the buildings from the neighborhood look down into this green space instead of looking into a typical mechanical equipment roof. And so we think that will provide a nice vista into what is otherwise usually just a roof. And some of those rectangular compositions occur, of course, down the street. You can see across the street as well. Some of the buildings along Miracle Mile, which are rather eclectic, each one having their own expression, and that has happened throughout history in Miracle Mile. You can see here the scale of the building up to the podium of the building next door behind on Galeano. And I think that summarizes the project. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bernardo. As you can see, I think we've achieved a very nice scale and design with this building. It was very well received by the Board of Architects, which reviewed the project prior to this board. Your staff is recommending approval with conditions. Those conditions are acceptable to my client. So I'd ask that you follow that recommendation and also vote to recommend approval to the City Commission of this project, which promises to revitalize this corner of Miracle Mile. With that, I'll reserve some time for rebuttal if necessary and hand it back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. City staff, we have a presentation.
I have a question for the applicant. Is there a reason why you're not really using the rooftop for a restaurant or something in such a beautiful, prominent location? To me, it would be a shame not to do that.
It is, but the client specifically wants to have that rooftop for themselves, to be able to have their garden and have their area for their office. So the idea is for it to be really accessory to the office and not accessory to any other
But
use.
you could still ask for it, even though it could be private, but it's a shame that such a great location, you're not taking advantage of that possibility.
As far as having dining up there,
Yeah,
you're saying?
I mean,
It's also, when we met we had our neighborhood meeting, the neighbors also expressed concern with the idea of there possibly being any sort of dining space up there.
a Miracle Mile,
Yep.
really? I find that to be,
Inevitably, if it doesn't happen here, it's gonna happen in other locations along the Maha, I would say, ultimately.
I would think it's a shame. And once you open it to the board, I'll make all the comments.
Thank you.
Good evening, Jennifer Garcia, City Planner. Could I have the PowerPoint, please? Thank you. So as you know, the location of the site is on Miracle Mile in Galeano. And you can see here on an aerial, it's just south of the garage entrance that belongs to Ten Aragon or 55 Miracle Mile. The current land use is commercial high-rise intensity, and the zoning is more limiting at MX2. It's within the Zane Freeman Miracle Mile overlay. There's existing conditions, as I'm sure, maybe have been a patron of the former Navarro Pharmacy, but they're on the top. You can see the corner on the bottom left, and on the bottom right is where the entrance to the public parking garage is. So the request is very simple, as described. They're requesting remote parking. So as you remember, early 2021, Miracle Mile was significantly changed. The height was decreased. There was TDRs that weren't allowed to be on Miracle Mile, and more significantly, they weren't allowed to have any parking on site, to provide the parking remotely, which is what they're requesting. So we all know where the site plan is, the commercial on the first 3 floors and office above. These are the stats, 2.9 FAR, 4 stories in height. Again, the retail and the office and the garden on the rooftop. So this is a street elevation showing the project on the right side with the alley between them and the 10 Aragons on the left. And that highlighted yellow rectangle is the entrance to the public parking. So this has been reviewed by DRC in September of last year. Board of Architects approved the project in March of this year. They had a neighborhood meeting as required in May, and here we are for planning and zoning. So they sent letters to the owners within 1,000 feet as required by code, 2 times actually, and the property is posted twice, as well as website posting, and is advertised in newspaper 1 time so far. So staff recommends, is it consistent with the comp plan, with the goals and objectives of the policy of the comp plan? And staff recommends approval with conditions. Those conditions are outlined in your staff report at the very end, but in summary, they obviously have to comply with remote parking requirements, which includes a covenant, an annual renewal, or remedial plan, and other requirements as they move forward after the approval of the commission. Then also maintain pedestrian access during construction on Miracle Mile and Galeano, as well as not impacting those very precious Miracle Mile pavers. And then maintain access within public alleyway. That was very important with the neighboring property. They'll also install street trees and other public realm improvements. And the hours of operation and noise are going to be guided by the zoning code. And that's it.
Thank you. Jill, how many speakers do we have?
We have 1 speaker on Zoom for this item.
Nobody in chamber?
No.
No? Could we go ahead and call up that speaker on Zoom? We also need to swear that speaker in
If they so desire.
if they desire. I just don't know how you're going to have 2 on Zoom.
Well, you can put 2 people on Zoom,
Okay.
I think.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Mr. Orozco, can you please open up your mic?
Oh, there we go. Good afternoon. How are you? My name is Daniel Orozco. I'm the property manager at 10 Aragon. Let me put my camera on. I apologize.
Could
How's
you
everybody doing?
state your address, please? Name and address for the record?
Yes, Daniel Orozco, 1970 Northwest 7th Street, apartment 504.
Thank you. Would you like to be sworn in?
Yes, that's fine.
Do you swear the testimony you're about to give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I swear the testimony I'm about to give will be the truth and nothing but the truth. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you, sir.
So just want to touch on two quick topics. One, regarding the parking spaces, I just want to be clear that 10 Aragon does not own those 80 parking spaces. And also, I'm curious, is there an agreement between the owner of the new building and with Double Park? And has that been approved by the commercial unit owner, CGI?
We didn't understand the question.
We
So
don't.
the 80 spots, yes,
Did he say
so the 80 spots, yeah, Double Park is the leasing of those spots. Those spots are owned by the commercial unit. So we want to know, is there a contract or an agreement between Double Park and the new owner of that property? And has it been approved by the commercial unit owner, CGI, who own those spaces?
Okay, when we get into discussion, we'll go ahead and make sure we get the answers for that. Do you have any other comments?
Awesome. We just, the residents and the association were very concerned about the noise if, any events on the rooftop. So we just wanted to, put that on the record that, that is something we have some concerns with. So
Thank you. Anything else?
thank you. That'll be it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Jill, do we have any other speakers?
No, no.
Okay, at this time, I'd like to go ahead and close it for public comment and open it for board discussion.
Well, I think what would be appropriate before we close it is have the rebuttal from the attorney
Sorry about that.
on those issues, and then we can close the public hearing and have discussion.
Thank you. So Mr. Orozco did attend our neighborhood meeting and expressed similar concerns there. And he also sent an email with some concerns also too. And I think they could be categorized, number one, as alley, use of the alley. And one thing that's very important to remember is that that alley is a public alley. So every building that fronts upon that public alley has a right to use that public alley. We understand that they receive a lot of their servicing of the building from the alley. But I think what's incumbent is for both buildings and both property managers, because both buildings are professionally managed, to sort of coordinate and make sure that the use of that alley is orderly. The number of parking spaces that we are going to be leasing will be in the commercial component of the building, and they are over and above what zoning requires. And I don't have a copy of the agreement with me, but I know there is an understanding between my client and the commercial unit owner at 10 Aragon regarding those parking spaces. And lastly, the rooftop, we started talking about it earlier. It's going to be used accessory for the office. Staff, anticipating this sort of objection regarding noise, has a condition of approval that requires us to comply with the city's noise ordinance, which is a specific set of regulations for the downtown area, which were adopted as part of the Business Improvement Overlay District. And there is already, and we have a video even to show it if you want to see it, the HVAC equipment that's on the roof of the commercial component of the 10 Aragon building is already pretty loud. And to be honest with you, I think we'll probably even drown out whatever noise there might be emanating from our rooftop. If you need to, we could play that video so you see exactly what the sound is, but it's considerable because it's commercial style air conditioning, several of them on the roof of that building. So I would say those are our responses. There was a lot of thought, a lot of effort went into this overlay zoning regulations, and you see it, and I think you see the evidence is there in the quality of this project. Thank you.
What is he was talking about 8 parking spaces?
80.
80 parking spaces.
Correct. Those are the number of parking spaces we are required and that we would be leasing in the commercial component of the 10 Aragon garage.
Because I wanted to answer the questions that he had.
And on those 80, you're going to have an agreement
Yes,
that's going to run with
correct.
the property.
As part of the city requirements, we then have to do a covenant which encumbers both properties.
Thank you. We'll go ahead and close it for public comment, board discussion. Vinny, would you get us going?
Yeah, sure. Mr. Garcia, I have a question, simple question. I think you've answered it before. So since this has not been approved, your agreement is basically like an option to take the spots? This is not a sign, this is more like an option of sorts, right?
Correct.
Okay, that's the way we've sort of seen it, just clarify, okay. That's good for you. I have a question regarding the conditions for approval, and this is for my own learning opportunity here. The way that this is written, there's a standards for review for these conditional approvals. This is obviously about parking. In your conditions, you bring up 2 with underground utilities and public realm improvements. I can understand a little bit of it. I'm not quite sure why they fall under a conditional approval for parking per se, if you're probably guaranteeing these through the site plan approval already.
Well, the public realm improvements is really about the trees and allowing that shade to happen on the east side of the street to basically be able to provide shade and provide a better pedestrian experience as they're walking from the
Isn't that
parking
a
to the
planning
actual
experience
building.
more than it is a parking issue that you're
It's
conditioning?
not a parking issue, but it's about connecting their parking to the
Okay,
actual
I get
building.
it. Okay. And the other one about the utilities, similar?
Maybe that's overreaching to have it connect to the other side of the street, but they are required to do the undergrounding behind their property anyway.
And again, my question is that sort of like a double dipping? You're doing this at the site plan approval and also at the parking approval or conditional approval?
I mean, we can change the condition not to have it. The thing is that
I'm not against it. I just want to know why you put it
they're required to do the undergrounding anyway, whether it's condition approval or not. If they leave where the wires are going back up on their side of the property, there's not really room where they're having their open space. So it only makes sense to have it right there. It makes sense to have it across the street.
Okay.
That was the thought.
It wasn't,
process.
I just wanted to learn why these became conditional. Okay.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'm good with the project.
Thank you. Chip?
Yeah, how are you? So if this was a new parking garage, how many electric vehicle spots would there have to be?
Oh, that's a very good question. Do you have those in your
So
drawings?
here's the direction I'm going in. I mean,
Yeah.
are we converting any of those 80 spots to electrical vehicle spots?
We are not.
Why not? If it was a new development, I would think they would you would require that. In fact, I think over the next 10 years, it really increases significantly, doesn't it? I mean, it's just a thought. I mean, to me, I like the building. I like the direction. I have no problem with that, but I'm just wondering, it's a huge benefit for this developer to have 80 spots, which is another question I have towards Kevin. Do we have anything in the city that, when we give up public parking for private spots, is there a percentage that we allocate maximum per garage? Or do we just say we take a survey and today for the next 4 months, there's 120 open spots, so giving away 80 is not a big issue?
Well, in this particular facility, they built over what their zoning code requirement was, and it's not the spaces that are dedicated to the public. So it's really not any spaces that the city controls.
Okay, I wasn't aware of that. So it's not really, quote, public parking.
No.
It's private parking that they've graciously allowed
available.
public.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
It's part of their commercial.
I understand. No, I get it now. Okay. I wasn't aware of that. I thought it was a requirement that they put forth 270-some public
The only
parking
way
spaces.
we kind of get involved in this one is for some reason the deal falls apart. Then they pay a big penalty to become part of the public system. But there's no
Okay, so
anticipation
that pay-in that we talked about a couple of months ago doesn't apply to this project?
Not at this point, only if they fail to provide the remote parking that they're required. Then there's a large payment. But
Okay.
we anticipate
Okay.
that this deal should go through just fine because there's excess space in the facility.
Okay, because
it's
really,
right
it's
next door.
just a private-to-private relationship here. It's
Yes.
not a private-to-public, because it was somewhat misleading to me when I saw public parking spots, that I thought it was in our inventory of public parking spots.
They should have just said open and available parking spaces, yeah.
I got you.
When,
Okay.
when they use the term public, it gets a little confusing.
I wasn't aware of that. So back to the EV thing. So I'm just curious to know, is that under consideration? Is it not under consideration? I mean,
It's a little difficult to require the facility that's providing the remote parking to make them upgrade their parking to meet the needs of the person who's requesting the remote parking. I mean, you're kind of incentivizing the remote parking, because basically the applicant would probably most likely pay the owner of the facility to install this excessive amount of
Well,
power.
we're
and
doing
such
that now to people.
for a new parking structure. But to convert an existing parking structure and have the wirings and all the, capabilities of being EV is very costly.
If I may, Chip, just to get the existing electrical vault and be able to increase the demand to meet those requirements, it's going to be very difficult. In this case, in a new project, you're designing for it. You're working with FPNL, and you're getting that load requirement. In an existing building, it's going to be very, very.
No, I remember the discussion, and you made some really good points about how many square feet you would need 5 years, 10 years, and 15 years out, unless technology changed, of course. So regarding that, do we have anything in our code that if we do refurb a building and we're using an existing parking garage, that we are requiring electrical upgrades, or no? We just.
Yes, I think it's triggered, I believe it's 10 or more spaces, they have to comply with the EV. I think that was lowered from 20 before, and I think now it's 10.
Okay.
So if they change the building substantially, I think beyond 50%, which is a lot, it's significant, you'd have to basically comply with the zoning regulations, which would include the EV.
So when they take 80 of the private public parking spots in this building, okay, are they wherever they are in the building, or is there a designated area for them?
I believe it's designated area. 'Cause I think the only thing that's actually privatized in that whole area is in the parking structure is the residential parking spaces.
It's
I
what,
think
I'm sorry, it's.
residential parking spaces are the ones that are reserved. The other ones are just balanced between the retail and the office spaces.
Are there
So
EV park?
that's why it's considered public parking, and that's why it's labeled public parking on the Galliano entrance. Because if you go to retail, if you drive to Ben & Jerry's, they're on the corner, you would go into that parking structure and park there.
Okay, so and I understand it's a private building, so they can do whatever they want. Do you know how many electric vehicle spaces are in the building now? 2. There are only 2. Wait, no. I'm sorry. I thought she was a ventriloquist for a minute.
We have a court reporter who right now is remote.
Yeah, okay.
So if you want to speak and you're knowledgeable, you're welcome.
I mean, we've already gone ahead, unfortunately, and closed it to the public.
Yeah, that's 2. I heard her say
Jennifer,
2.
go ahead.
The chair wants that.
Yeah. Okay, so there are 2 now. Are those 2 going to stay as public, or are those 2 going to go into the newly given away 80?
I think it depends on where they're located. I don't know the ins and outs of the structure of where it is. It's probably not in the residential floor. Mario?
I'm just curious to know.
So the 80 spaces that we're using are in the first 3 levels of the parking garage. The commercial component is the first levels that you drive into in the parking garage, and we're not going to be using those 2 that are EV.
Okay, so they'll still be available to the
Right.
public. Okay, that's all I have. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Chip. Julio?
Yeah. I like this building. It bridges the history of Miracle Mile, which when it started, everybody forgets, it was basically a contemporary architecture, very much in the 50s vein. We've gotten into the historicism, and it's good to see a building that is so well designed and doesn't have to go to the historic system of Mediterranean architecture. The scale of it, the connection to the buildings next door, everything works well. So it's just a good addition, I think, to Miracle Mile. I'm glad to see it.
Thank you. Thank you, Julio. Robert?
I concur with my colleague. I really like to see the diversity of architecture being done here. I think it's a great addition to the mile, and I think it's in every city, diversity of style and architecture is always good, and I'm glad we're doing it. I have two comments. One, I have not heard any mentioning of payment in lieu for remote parking. I thought anything that it was done in Miracle Mile or in other areas, you had to pay into the city in lieu of because there's a benefit, tremendous benefit to park and have remote parking without having to build it. I thought there was a requirement for payment in lieu. I want either Kevin to address or somebody to address that. And maybe Jennifer, you could come up and.
Yeah, so there's a fee to use the remote parking, which they're agreed to pay that fee, $5,500 per space.
Okay, so there is a payment.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. I didn't hear that before.
And then Kevin was talking about the remedial plan, which is a part of this resolution as well, part of this of the zoning code. If for some reason they falls through and they can't park in that facility and they can't find parking anywhere else, then they could pay again, and that would be the payment in lieu you're talking about.
Okay. And the other comment is, again, I think that I heard what Mr. Orozco's comment about the noise, but I think that in a location like this, really should consider having the opportunity to have a rooftop food and beverage, because the way that the mile's going, I think that's going to be the most appropriate location to have this. If there's no other comment, well, after the chair, I will come back. That's it from out. Congratulations, you got a really nice project.
Thank you. I too like the project. I like the fact that it doesn't look like the standard project that we've been seeing. And I agree with Julio that it does reflect back to Miracle Mile and back in the 50s and the days and so forth. The question that I have is for Kevin, if I may, please. In this project, we're going ahead and using 80 spaces. Is that correct for this project?
That's correct.
How many extra spaces does this garage have? And the reason I'm going to that is somebody keeping track? In other words, you've got other projects that may be coming or are in the pipeline. Is there a count that's being kept?
This is the very first one. So this will be the first one on the tally board. I can't remember. Okay. For some reason, 100 is what's sticking in my mind.
So,
but I can't tell you that for certain. But it is more than the 80 that's being requested.
What I would ask is for the city or the parking department or whoever keeps track of that to actually keep track of the spaces that are being used up by projects, so we don't get into a situation where parking is overlapped and somebody says, okay, I'm going to go ahead and take another 80 spaces. So, and wait, there's only 20 left. So you have to go look somewhere else.
That absolutely makes sense.
Okay.
And we have those numbers.
Go ahead, please.
So the commercial component of the 10 Aragon parking garage is 378 public parking spaces, or 378 parking spaces, let's say. 230 of them are what's required by the commercial component of the building. And so we would be using 80 of those 230. So there's still going to be another 68. No, excuse me. We're using 80 of the overage. So there's going to be 68 still remaining that are surplus parking spaces that we are not using.
Okay, as long as, I would really like for the city to keep track of that. I think that's important.
So you said, just to clear, you said there's 300 and how many spaces for the commercial?
Let me get back there. 378.
And they need, for their requirement, 200?
230, right?
Okay.
So at least 148. So that's 148 that are surplus.
Okay.
My other comment that I have is one of the prerequisites for the condition of approval is maintain access within the public alley. What I see time and time again in public alleys is that they become delivery zones for trucks when they unload for commercial businesses and so forth. So they actually end up blocking the public alleys for cars that are meant to go through can't. Does the city have, and I understand it's inevitable because they need delivery, so they're either going to park on the street in the middle where I've seen them park in that area, or they're going to try to pull in if it's not big, if it's small enough or so forth. But does the city have some kind of implementation to maintain that alley open at all times, or ingress and egress, so there's no frustration with
So this
residents?
particular alley is kind of a unique case because it dead ends. But absolutely, alleys are intended for loading and unloading of the trucks for the restaurants and businesses. But the rule is it's a 20-foot alley and you have to leave 10 feet so that somebody can get by. Now, obviously, for police and for parking enforcement, it becomes a big issue because not the alley we're talking about, but the one across the street behind the colonnade and the colonnade office building. I can tell you, if you go there at the right time of day, it is always a problem. And there are either police or parking enforcement officers trying to get that open because one truck, and it's hard to know which one, is legally parked and another truck parks next to it and nobody can get through. So essentially in that situation, both trucks get a citation and then we try and figure it out later who was the second one there. But alleys are very difficult. One of the reasons why the city commission set the fine for blocking an alley at $125. But most of the professional delivery folks kind of understand the rules and they try and follow them. But because of the amount of traffic and activity, it does become an enforcement issue almost on a daily basis.
Understood. Thank you. All right. Anybody like to make a motion? Mr. Behar?
Sure. I'll make a motion to approve with a condition and an option that if they choose to incorporate a rooftop restaurant, they could do so.
Can I ask a question of staff with regard to that issue? Because I understand we're talking about remote parking. Is there any special requests that they need in order to have a restaurant that would be open to the public?
No, it'd be an allowed use as a restaurant in the MX2.
So they could have it if they chose to
In the
without
future.
a specific approval? Okay,
Right.
very good.
Okay.
So your motion is,
To approve as presented with the option, the owner's sole discretion of incorporating a restaurant on the rooftop area.
So I don't understand, if we're talking about parking, why are we looking at this building site? I'm just, why, I mean, I don't mind the rooftop, but I'm just, is it congruent?
Well, for the ground floor, you're not required parking on Miracle Mile. I believe that's the case. So what's the difference between having a restaurant on the ground floor or on the rooftop? You're not required by code, you're not required any parking. You only require, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, for the office component of the building.
We just voted on that a couple months ago.
I'm not opposed to the rooftop. I'm in favor of a clean approval with maybe a recommendation for the rooftop. I don't know that I want to put it as a tie-in to this vote.
What I'm trying to do is for them not to have to come back in the future. If they choose to do it, they don't have to do it.
As a condition as a parking condition. This is a parking conditional use. That's where we were trying to get to. Does it make difference if we do the rooftop approval now for the future use of?
well, Jennifer, let me ask you, if they want to come, if they want to come back down the road and do a restaurant there, what's the process?
I mean, I think to do a restaurant there, you'd have to have some kind of rooftop kitchen, which they can't do.
But they will have to come
because
back
they're
for the-
limited to 4 stories.
Come back anyway.
So they'd have to, I guess, bring up the food through the elevator and feed your patrons that way. But they can't have a kitchen on the roof because they're already maxed out at 4 stories.
So they'd have to have a kitchen on the first floor, second, or third, and bring it up. So I think the way it's designed, it sounds like they wouldn't be able to because of the design. I like the idea. Miracle Mile should have that.
I mean, it would be nice to activate that area.
Yeah.
But it doesn't sound like they can unless.
So I'll make a motion to approve as presented.
I'll second it.
Recommendation, correct.
Second?
Julio made second. Any comment? No, call the roll, please.
Benny Torre,
Yes?
Chip Withers,
Yes.
Robert Behar,
Yes.
Julio Gabriel,
Yes.
ABI Assistant.
Yes. Thank you, and congratulations.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Greatly appreciated.
Thank you. Okay, the next item is E2.
With the permission of the chair, I'd like to read in E2 and E3 since they're related, and we'll have one public hearing and we'll vote separately on the items.
Thank you.
Item E2, a resolution of the City Commission of Coral Gables, Florida, granting remote parking conditional use approval pursuant to Article 14 process, Section 14-203, conditional uses for proposed remote parking associated with a mixed-use project referred to as the Avenue Hotel and Residence on property legally described as lots 8 through 11, Block 9, revised plat of Coral Gables Industrial Section 351 San Lorenzo Avenue, Coral Gables, Florida, including required conditions providing for a repeal of provision, severability clause, and an effective date. Item E3, a resolution of the City Commission of Coral Gables, Florida, approving receipt of transfer of development rights, TDRs, pursuant to Zoning Code Article 14 process, Section 14-204.6, review and approval of use of TDRs on receiver sites for the receipt and use of TDRs for a mixed-use project referred to as the Avenue Hotel and Residences on property legally described as lots 8 through 11, Block 9, revised plat of Coral Gables Industrial Section 351, San Lorenzo Avenue, Coral Gables, Florida, including required conditions providing for repeal of provision, severability clause, and an effective date. Items E2 and E3 public hearing.
Thank you. The applicant, please.
Good evening again, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Mario Garcia Serra with offices at 600 Brickell Avenue, here today representing San Lorenzo Property LLC, the owner of the property at 351 San Lorenzo Avenue, joined today by Mr. Willie Bermeo, our project architect, as well as Oscar Rogers Sr. and Oscar Rogers Jr., my clients. This is another project that is utilizing some new or seldom used code provisions to create an exciting new project, which will finally bring a hotel to this area of Merrick Park. The project site is about 11,000 square feet in size. If I could please have the presentation. There you see where it's located at the northwest corner of the intersection of San Lorenzo Avenue and Laguna Street, directly across from Neiman Marcus Department Store. It is zoned MX2 and located within the Design and Innovation Overlay District. The zoning code adopted in February of 2021 extended the ability to remote park and to utilize TDRs in this area of the city. Being able to remote park helps to bring the scale of construction down to a very agreeable level. This building is 7 stories and 83 feet in height in an area where many new buildings reach up to 120 feet. This more intermediate scale has rarely been seen in the Gables and is also possible because with TDRs, we can now transfer floor area from historic properties to this area of the city, which for this property means an additional 9,600 square feet. We are proposing to develop a 54-unit hotel and residences project where each unit will be owned as a condominium unit and centrally managed by a hotel management company. These sort of units are the larger apartment-like hotel units, which have become popular recently and will at last provide the Shops at Merrick Park a nearby luxury hotel. With that said, this is the location of the remote parking spaces. It's going to be across the street at the parking garage of the Merrick Shops. And with that said, hand it over to Willie now so that he can make the presentation of the project.
Thank you, Mario. Willie Bermeo with address at 4711 South Lejeune Road. Mr. Chair and members of the board. I'll take you quickly through the design. In this project, we're taking advantage of the Mediterranean bonus for the architecture, and basically is an architectural response. But like our legal counsel said, one of the things we wanted to do was to keep the bulk of the building as small as possible. Instead of reaching 11, 12 stories, which we could have done, we wanted to keep that under 7 stories. This is in response to what's immediately across the street from us. So this is a project where we're trying to be very sensitive to Merrick Park and its scale, its retail, the treatment of the base, giving it a feeling of a Ralph Lauren type feel when you walk by with the shops. We are buying some of the on-street parking to expand the sidewalks and create an outdoor cafe environment. In an earlier applicant, there were some comments regarding deliveries, I believe along the alleyways. One of the things that we've done and one of the takeaways from this design is that we've created a breezeway. And that is done for a couple of reasons. Number one is we wanted to reduce congestion for both drop-offs and deliveries for the select service hotel. So all of that is being done within the property, not on street or not on the alleyway. And we think that's a tremendous benefit. Second, even though the setbacks requirements along both Laguna and San Lorenzo are 0, up to the 45-foot step back, we have provided on the second and third level a 7.5-foot step back. So we wanted to make sure that we would provide as much light and sunlight to this sidewalk, and then the building goes up to the 7th level. On the rooftop, we have an amenity level with a swimming pool and areas for small dining. In short, this is a small project. We basically are dealing with 48 luxury suites, basically 1 and 2 bedroom super suites. And on the ground level, we have approximately 3,800 square feet of commercial space that is immediately fronting the front entrance to Neiman Marcus. So in short, that is the essence of what you're looking at. One of the items that we're here for, obviously, is remote parking. So this project would require 67 spaces as designed. The developer has an agreement to purchase 70 with an option to increase that up to 100. I'd like to go through some of the elements of the...
We had a video, but I don't know if it's at the end of the presentation.
Can we get your name and address?
I'm sorry. Heriberto Delgado on behalf of Bermea Hamel and Partners, 4711 South Lejeune Road. Coral Gables, 33146. We moved recently.
So Heriberto will take you through the different levels. We basically have 8 units per floor. The floors stack, and the only difference is we have a lanai on the second level, which is where the building setbacks the 7.5 feet.
Are you able to control the presentation now?
Yes, well, we had a video, but I don't think it's included here. Could I connect the laptop?
There you go.
Oh, it is?
Is it running? Oh, there we go.
Here you can see in the aerial view how well the project is fitting within the context in terms of scale and in respect to the other buildings, some of them already built and others under construction. This is a view of the corner of San Lorenzo and Laguna. You get an idea of how the retail spaces will be activating the street. This is the view along San Lorenzo and how it would spill out into the sidewalk. This is a view of the interiors just to give you a feel of what the project is. This is the lobby of the hotel. And these are a few views of the interior units. You can see how some of the iconic or this dark navy blue is also being implemented as part of the interior of the units as we're doing on the base of the building with the pre-cut stone. And on the last view, I think we will be taking a look at a pool deck at the roof level.
So we currently have approvals from the Board of Architects and Board of Adjustment, and we're down to two more steps with you and subsequently with the City Commission for both the TDRs and the remote parking. And we're open to any comments or questions from the board.
Thank you.
Thank you, Willie. With this project, we're coming full circle to a certain extent. Oscar, Roger, and family developed the first mixed-use project in this area in the early 2000s, and are now bringing this area its first hotel. This is another big step in realizing the mixed-use village, which was envisioned for this area of the city in the late 1990s. Your staff is recommending approval with conditions which are acceptable to my client. We ask that you follow that recommendation and vote to recommend approval of this promising project. Thank you very much for your time. Reserve some time for rebuttal if necessary.
Thank you. Staff?
Good evening, Deborah Garcia, City Planner. Can I have the PowerPoint, please? All right, just discussed, the location of the property is San Lorenzo and Laguna. You can see here it's just outside of the Shops at Merrick Park development. The current future land use designation is industrial, and the zoning is mixed use, and it's within the Design Innovation District. The property is on the top image, and the Shops at Merrick Park, which is where the remote parking will occur, is on the bottom image. And they're just having two requests. The first one is the remote parking. This is a site plan. This is the retail, like see in the orange, and the lobby in the yellow, an extended sidewalk along the perimeter. Site data, I'm gonna move through this quickly. This is the TDRs was the 9,600 square feet, and they're requesting a total of 70 remote parking spaces. And they'll be parking those across the street in the North Laguna parking structure. The second request is the TDRs. They're beginning their TDRs, the 9,600 square feet from 36 Bonicia, which is the local historic landmark, currently being used as an Airbnb, bed and breakfast. And this has been reviewed by DRC in November of last year. Board of Architects for approval back in February of this year. Board of Adjustment for the upper floor step backs was approved recently in April, and they had a neighborhood meeting in May, and we're here for planning and zoning. They sent letters within 1,000 feet of the property 2 times. The property is posted 2 times as well in website posting, and it's been advertised in newspaper once. So we believe that, staff believes that the application is consistent with the comprehensive plan, the goals, objectives, and policies, and we recommend approval with conditions. And those conditions are outlined, obviously, again, in your staff report, but just to summarize, to comply with the remote parking requirements, to include the covenant, the annual renewal, the remedial plan in case the parking spaces fall through, as well as maintain pedestrian access during construction along Laguna and San Lorenzo, and a payment of the loss of 5 on-street parking spaces due to the impact of the widening of the sidewalks, and improved pedestrian crossing signage and ramping along that west wing of the intersection of San Lorenzo and Laguna. And that's it.
Thank you. I'd like to go ahead and open it up for public comment. Jill?
No one on Zoom?
No one on Zoom?
No one
Nobody in
present.
chambers?
No.
Nobody on the phone platform? Mario, I'll go ahead and close it for public comment.
No need for rebuttal.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to open it up for board discussion. Julio?
I drive by this site every day, and obviously there's a hole in the fabric of the city, which this building will fulfill it and fill it good. It's a nice project, and I don't see anything that's wrong with it.
Thank you. Denny?
This is about parking, so I don't have any issues with use of the Merrick Park Village parking. I think there's plenty there. So obviously, that's the whole intent of providing 1,000, 2,000 spaces for future uses like this, so I'm all for it.
Correct. Chip?
Question.
Sorry, I'm just trying to get my arms around this whole remote parking. So
This one is very much like you started to go down the path last time. In fact, this project, Village of Merrick Park, was built.
Kevin, if you may, for the court reporter, if you would just state.
Kevin Kinney, Parking Director.
Thank you.
Was approved by the city in the early 2000s, more than 20 years ago.
Right.
And as part of that project, the city negotiated 400 additional spaces within Village of Merrick Park that are dedicated to non-Village of Merrick Park users.
Right.
So I actually have some control over those spaces because they're dedicated to the surrounding neighborhood. This will be the first actual contract to use any of those 400 spaces. And those 400 spaces, 220 of them are in the two garages north of Village of Merrick Park, and 180 of those spaces are in the office tower, which is on the other side of Ponce.
Right.
So this is the first time that those 400 spaces are being used to develop a project. And so this is a number that I am well aware of because I have some interest in those 400 spaces. And we have chastised Village of Merrick Park historically for misusing those 400 spaces. But this is a perfectly appropriate use of those 400 spaces because it's a project outside of the Village of Merrick Park that we believe supports the development of this neighborhood.
So hence the verb controlled versus owned.
Yes. The previous project, we neither control or own the spaces.
This one, we're halfway there.
This one, we have some control over use of the space, but we do not directly manage or own them.
So I happened to be on the commission when the whole Merrick Park deal, which the city did a terrible deal with Merrick Park. Not in the development of it, but in the monetizing of it, I think.
I would like to have more control of the spaces, yes.
Yeah. So the original intent was, as those warehouses to the north were developed into what they are now, there would be additional public parking to support a lot of that activity.
Yes.
So philosophically, this is kind of a change because you're now giving 20% forever to this developer. And I know the developer, I know Will, I have all the respect in the world for these guys. You're giving basically all that parking, which was intended to be public parking, to a single user. Now, I like the trade-off between the height and the density and so that's what's kind of pushing me into the direction of let's go with this. But philosophically, tying up 20% of your parking capacity, and all we've ever heard is we're out of parking, to someone in perpetuity, how do you justify that?
So this is kind of a unique situation. The whole Village of Merrick Park area, which is now called the Innovation District, I think.
Yeah, something like that.
So what's happened in the intervening 20 years, and we can go down there and there's still some major construction happening now, but as those other projects have gone up, there's been significant parking requirements.
Okay.
So yes, I would agree with you. The on-street parking is slammed. In this area, it probably always will be, just like the downtown area, because there's such a limited number of on-street spaces. But both Village of Merrick Park and proposed developments have surveyed the parking availability in Village of Merrick Park, the 3,400 plus spaces. The parking in that facility is very underutilized. So I do think there's been a shift in the 20 years, and it seems like this is a good use of those spaces. But I would never say there's a lack of parking in this district. On-street parking, yes.
It's terrible, right. So your comment that the past 20 years, we have kind of required additional parking, we've held the line on parking requirements.
Yes.
So this, we no longer feel we have to hold that line any longer, and we're allowing this developer not to build parking? Is that now, that's the attitude change I'm asking about?
I think the infill, and there are just a very limited number of development sites left. I think the infill, there is more than enough capacity at Village of Merrick Park for the infill that is still remaining. We've got one large parcel on Aurora.
Right.
We've got another parcel along Lejeune,
right,
between Altera and San Lorenzo.
Right.
But other than that, there's not a lot of parcels that are remaining to be developed.
So it's safe to say the one across from Nordstrom, the vacant lot,
Yes.
if a developer wanted to come in there and build a 6-story hotel, they would not have to require any on-site parking? Is that the precedent you're setting right now?
That would be a little more difficult conversation because it depends on if it was a hotel. I don't know that there's enough space in those 2 north garages
the 200
to do a hotel. Because right now, with the 220 spaces are in the 2 north properties, we're taking away 70 of them. So there's 150 left.
And the rooftop of the Nordstrom garage there, is that not available?
That wouldn't be a deal with the city. That would be a deal with Village Merrick Park. And I can tell you, Village Merrick Park is very protective of their customer parking.
So I guess my main question to you as a director of the city's parking empire, your attitude change is lessened on the requirement for developers to put parking on site because you feel that over the past, and I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, I'm just trying to understand so you feel over the past 20 years we have held the line and we've required enough parking in order to allow 20% or so of our controlled parking towards a new development.
Yes, it doesn't necessarily need to be open and available to transient parking, short-term parking.
Okay.
Because we've got a huge parking supply in this district.
Mr. Chairman, I need to
Yes.
at least understand. When you say north, I'm seeing east and west parking. I don't know what north is because.
So the main garage is the one that's south of the shops at Merrick Park. It's the big garage that everybody pulls in when they're going.
It's always full. That's the south.
That's the south.
Okay.
The north is there's garages underneath both of the residential buildings north.
That's what you would call north. Is that the ones you're deferring this place will be using those particularly, or those mostly?
And then the east is the one over on the 100 block of San Lorenzo, next to the office tower that's part of Village Merrick.
So the other project that was looking for parking waivers was going to use
That's
that
in
location.
that one, and
Yes.
that one.
Correct?
That one.
That was
is-
going over there.
We approved the project.
Yeah, it was on that side. I'm just saying location-wise. That was going to
But
go use those
I shouldn't have
spaces?
said there's never, yes, but that's in the tall garage that's a
Nobody ever
1,000
goes there. I've
and
never
some
been in there.
spaces.
So I understand what you're talking about. The
Yeah.
one in the north, now I understand, is in the apartments, underneath the apartments.
Yes,
Which
there's
is
2 garages.
It's a little awkward to get in. You got to make a
Both-
real hard turn left and then go
Yeah.
up the ramp.
Both
That's the one this
garages
would
are a
be.
little over 200 spaces.
It's a really funky garage. Okay.
No one even knows it's public parking, right?
Yeah, and they are, to be honest, almost as empty as the
Yeah,
tall
I
office
can
garage.
understand why.
I mean, I'm surprised because I go there to park sometime, and I don't know how many empty spaces really. So the fact that there are extra spaces, I'm surprised about that. But let me ask you, before I start, are you done there? Or
I'm done, yeah, thank you.
I just don't want to. But again, is there a payment? Because the other project that came in was
Yes.
paying like $10,500 per space or something like that. Are they paying into
So,
this?
The previous project, the rate on Miracle Mile is 5,500. The rate in the Innovation District is 10,000.
Yeah, we
right?
remember
Is
we increased it.
10,000.
We debated that for.
Yes.
So they are
And-
paying-
And then in other areas, it's 12,500. But in this zone, it's $10,000 per space.
And that money is going to a fund, parking fund that we?
Yes, to develop
City.
parking
Okay.
any place
Okay.
in the city. And if for some reason, well, it's an agreement with the city, so I don't really foresee this happening. But if for some reason they lost that contract, then they would have to pay the fund again. I mean, the city's not going to renege on the contract.
We'll figure this out eventually.
Mario, I'd like to ask you a question, if I may. The concept of this property is done as a hotel, but the units are sold.
Correct. They're in the
So
condominium
it's-
form of ownership.
So it's done sort of in the form of a resort transient use that would be within the units. When the units go back on the market for people to stay there, it's done through the main desk?
Correct.
Okay. So the licensing and so forth is done through the hotel part itself?
There's a centralized management that's going to manage the units that are being rented out as hotels.
Can the unit owners opt out of that? And
A unit
do
owner
their
could
own?
live there some of the time or use it to reside and not have it part of the hotel pool.
And what happens if they want to go through other platforms to go
No,
ahead?
they have to go through, it has to be managed as a hotel, so there has to be one
Okay,
centralized
that's-
management.
that's what I wanted to
One
make
front
sure.
desk, one, yeah.
Okay,
And they cannot lease it on their own.
No.
okay. That's where I was going. Thank you. Anybody like to make a motion?
I'd like to move. approval.
Sorry, we need two separate motions.
Oh, sorry, thank you.
Need one on E2 first.
Go ahead, Julio. So let's do E1 first.
No, it's E2.
I'm sorry.
There's two items.
2 and E3.
E2
I
and
apologize.
E3. E2 first.
I'd like to move for approval for items E2.
I'll second.
That's in accordance with department recommendation.
Correct.
For the remote parking. We have a first. Chip went ahead a second. Any comments? No? Call the roll, please.
Chip Withers,
Yes.
Robert Behar,
Yes.
Julio Gabriel,
Yes.
Benny Torrey,
Yes.
Avi Eisenstadt.
Yes. The next is E3, that has to do with the transfer of development rights. Is there a motion?
I move to approval of E3 also,
With,
as it's written.
as with the recommendation of staff?
Correct.
Can I discuss just a question? Where are the development rights coming from? Which structure?
They
Phoenicia.
identified it in the,
36 Phoenicia.
36 what?
Phoenicia.
36 Phoenicia. It's a historic landmark, actually, the original homestead of the Douglas family, for whom Douglas Road is named after.
Just want to get that on the record.
okay.
So Julio went ahead and made a motion. Robert seconded it. Any further discussion? No? Call the roll, please.
Robert Behar,
Yes.
Julio Gabriel,
Yes.
Benny Torrey,
Yes.
Chip Withers.
Yep.
Avi Eisenstadt.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, members of the board. I hope you have a great evening.
Thank you. Next, we have item E4. Let's take, well,
Want to take a little break?
no, we can get it going.
Okay, I thought you were leaning
I
that
was,
way,
but
I'm perfectly
they're
okay.
filing out quickly.
Okay, item E4. An ordinance of the City Commission of Coral Gables, Florida, providing for a text amendment to Article 2 zoning district, Section 2-405, residential infill regulation overlay district, RIR, of the City of Coral Gables official zoning code to provide a maximum building length of 300 feet for all properties seeking approval pursuant to the residential infill regulations, providing for severability, repeal or codification, and an effective date. Item E4, public hearing.
Okay, Jennifer Garcia, city planner. As you may remember, February of last year, actually, there was a project that brought some controversy as the length of it. The board, actually, I was hoping that Mr. Rovato would be here. It was his motion actually to advise the commission of maybe adding some kind of limit as far as the length of the buildings for this district. That didn't move at the time, but now there's a commissioner, actually vice mayor, who wants to sponsor this text amendment. So the text amendment, like you said, is limiting the buildings within this district to be only 300 feet in length, facing a street.
Why 300? How did? do you have any type of presentation or PowerPoint or?
I do not. No.
Okay.
No, it's just one sentence.
How long was the one we argued about or discussed?
How long is what?
It was, forget what street it was, but it was from Salcedo to Lejeune, whatever that length is.
Yes.
What is the length of that? Do you know? Just a
What
comparison.
length was that building? That
Yeah, what would you say that is compared to 300?
I think it was a little between 5 and 550.
What I'd like to do is, before we get into discussion, let's find out, is there anybody here from the public, Jill, that signed up?
No,
Anybody on Zoom or on phone platform?
no.
At this time, I'd like to go ahead and close it for public comment and open it up. Ready?
So to answer your question, 300 actually came from the city of Miami, have very similar regulations. They require a break. I don't think they actually use the word length of building. And then looking at past developments in the district, they're using the RAR, the regulations, the residential info regulations. They're all within that 300 feet.
But
All as in there's two of them.
to put things in context, we
Not the
discussed this
most recent one. That
a lot. The building
Can
was,
you,
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, you need to lean into your.
Sorry about that. Just to put things in context, the building was about 500 feet.
I believe so.
I'm going to remember. So 300 feet, can you do 300, take 10 feet break, and then do 200 and just call that two buildings, and there's 10 feet in between two
You
very
could.
close looking.
Right, and have a
very
facade
close to
there.
the same looking buildings?
Right.
Is that going to accomplish
I
anything?
think her intent here is to limit the building development and have open space. Now, for that particular
Understood, but
project,
this
it's
doesn't
probably
do a
little
lot
bit
of
different.
that. I mean, if there's no other requirements, change the building design from one to the other, you could just say, I'm going to do two buildings, 250 and 250, and just call it a day, and nothing's happened.
I think that was a very special project that.
No, I know,
has a
but if you're
significant-
trying to fix it, I'm not sure this is doing much.
And actually, you could have two buildings right abutting each other with no separation of 10 feet, and you're going to accomplish the same thing, a 500-foot building. I'm not sure. I see the intent, and I think it could be good. The city of Miami has a open to the sky paseo requirement, I believe, that then dictates. And I believe the county also does, and you have to have a separation. But I don't know how much can we impose.
But I guess the condition is that the two parcels are owned by the same group or individual, then the additional requirements may make a difference. But if you have two different owners, and you make one carve out a piece of it, and the other one may carve out a piece of it, just to create this big, huge courtyard, you're kind
But
of.
Vinny, that's simply circumvented. You have one entity owns a parcel, and the other entity owns, and the same developer, and you don't have to adhere.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
You know,
You just change your name.
that's
All right, so
it.
you guys are the experts here, so how do you fix it? I mean, I remember you talking about Codina's building, and, you know, the streetscape is so important. You know, we don't care as much about 50, 60, 70 feet as we do walking down and seeing a blank wall. Is there a way to architecturally clean it up to make it set back? Maybe every 100 feet it has to set back 10 feet or something like that?
Well, it's already a requirement in the med bonus that has to be set back. I think if a building facade is longer than 150, at 100 intervals, it has to be some kind of vertical relief.
So I
Yeah.
already think there is some provision, requirements that will dictate that the building has the articulation, breaking the facade. I understand the intent is not to have the long 500, the whole block, I think it's like 500 feet from side to side. How do we break it, architecturally to be able to maybe read as two buildings with a break in the middle,
Can I interrupt? I hope I'm not going to take too much time from everybody, but I think this is important because if we're going to fix this, and it's a very important area, right? This is the North Ponce area. Yeah. I think we need to go back. Why this our residential infill regulation really happened? What was the intent that we're trying to accomplish?
to bring more density to that area.
Density. And they did it in these huge swaths of big, you can go ahead and just do this block to block, and we're gonna give you all this, the extra density, and there was no reason to start dividing it up at the time. Just go at it, go for block to block.
I
That
think
was
the
kind
thought
of
came
short-sighted.
afterward of maybe we should have limited.
Right, but there was a
somehow.
short-sighted view saying, just go at it with density, and there was no, hey, cut the block up, or have these other incentives. So at this point, we're sort of trying to fix a problem that was.
But you
making
know,
sense.
Benny, there are requirements that you have to have every 250 feet, you have to have a paseo. That is in the code today. There are provisions, you know, that you have to make you break it up. It may be that one project, you know, and that, you know, that didn't do the necessary, you know. I brought in a project that I was abutting, the back was Miami-Dade County. Okay, so there's no opportunity to create paseo. What are you gonna do, into a, you know, the bridge to nowhere? You know, so I think, I like the intent. I think we need to maybe look at it where there is more specific requirements to achieve, you know, the massiveness of a continuous building.
So it requires some kind of building separation?
I don't know if it's a separation or, I mean, Jennifer, it's for me right now, you know, it was my fault for not reading the whole.
Can I ask a question?
You know, but it needs to be something that gives the developer a greater opportunity.
But, okay, let's put logic here. The one that got done, let me go back. To assemble something this large from Salcedo to Lejeune, two sides, 500 feet, you got to put a symbol of 20 properties, 30 properties. Besides the one that got assembled or done, was there one family that controlled the whole thing?
I think it was less than 20 properties.
But it's still a substantial amount of
Yes.
properties to assemble. Was there one family that owned everything? How did that one come to be? Because I'm asking, what is the likelihood that somebody's going to assemble, reality, Salcedo to Lejeune again? Or anything large?
It's happening.
Well, it's happening.
The corrugated village has been done. It's assembled a whole block.
You're right.
It'll happen.
I guess you could, yeah.
In the mic, we need to speak in the mic because the core reporter is listening on Zoom. When you don't speak in the mic, it's really hard for her to hear.
Yeah.
Was this okay, was the project that we were talking about, was that in the craft section?
No, it's in the RIR.
So was
No,
further.
it's just limiting to the multifamily districts.
It was.
Her concern is not the mixed-use districts, because, I mean, you want to create that wall, that living room wall, you know, and create that space in the public realm. It's more of letting these buildings have that density that was part of the policy that the commission set, however many, 5 years ago, or 6 years ago, I think now. But to also allow those buildings to kind of fit the context better, because those apartment buildings, although they're only 2 or 3 stories tall, they're very small, you know, they're on 50-foot wide lots. And so this would allow the new development of taking advantage of the extra density to be able to fit in the context more, the fine grain urbanism.
I think what I'm hearing is that this is just not enough to accomplish what is intended. Am I?
Or to do something that could be done well, considering some of these things could really screw things up. I mean, if you do 1 or 2 of these from one block to the other, and do 2, it'd be a mess. Why not take an architectural approach to this and really get into the fix, besides just putting 300 feet on it?
And if you want to break down the scale, which is not, then you're going to have to, you know, maybe take that separation all the way through, at least in the actual building, because, you know, right now, the way the 300 feet, if you have 500 feet, you say, okay, 300 feet, I'm going to do 300 feet, and I'm going to do the other building, the other 200. So you're not, at the end of the day, you're not really accomplishing what the intent, you know. I don't have an answer tonight. We need to look at it, study, and, you know, and then maybe come up with a solution that will, maybe is, you know, you have to create a break of X amount of open to the sky. That way you dictate that you have to have two, instead of one building, two independent buildings. That gets complicated sometimes because then your parking starts getting inefficient. And so, this is not that simple. It's creating, a 300-foot maximum because especially in some of the lots in the Gables. Remember, the majority of the lots are only 100 foot in depth. So you don't have the flexibility when you got to put liner units in most cases, and you're really going to start taking away the development right that property has, in my opinion.
But is a concern that legal had brought up as far as what impact this is, as far as a taking of property rights. However, she still wants to move forward because she feels like this is a good fix for the issue of having the long buildings in a neighborhood context that has the short individual building.
Without taking any property, specifically, I could tell you that is, yes, you're going to be taking development right from the property owners. And I think that, without doing it correctly, the analysis, I think we're going to set ourselves as a city in a little.
For the Bert Harris?
Yes.
Well, I mean, if you have like individual front doors along the way, like some of the developments of townhomes, I don't think if that was 300 feet, that's necessarily.
But that's not intended for the townhome. That's intended for the RR.
That's right. That's the difference there.
Yeah. Okay. But you will never have. I don't think you will never have a townhome project that is 500 feet long.
What's 100 feet high? What does that give you? Floors? How many floors?
Really, because there's 100 feet to the top of architecture, parapet and all. So you only really get 9 stories.
What if you were to have some kind of green space offsetting that joint building and allow somebody to actually pop up a little, just a smaller amount that you take off? Does that help anything? Give that square footage to the top, just so you can carve out some space on the ground? Is there any place to carve out or force a carve out to give more space? In other words, I don't know.
Board early last year, a discussion of limiting the building height, the building length.
That was with Lewis.
Yeah, it was Luis's motion.
But with more, I think the intent is there. I think that just limiting to 300 with no guidelines, I think it's where I'm having a difficult time being able to support something like this. I don't have the answer tonight. And it's something that I would definitely, start thinking about and see what could be the right solution for this.
What I'm hearing is that basically there's in other words, somebody can work around this very easily. If you're doing the 300, doing a 300 and a 200, you still accomplish the same thing.
But your building code is still going to require some kind of building separation for fire, depending on how many openings you have.
The thing is, that when you start assembling, the more you assemble, the better. Why not just keep assembling, right? So there's no reason to stop at 20,000 feet. You want to keep going and going. So by doing that, you're promoting the larger. Once you start on a block, you got to keep going, right? So how do you fix that so it does not become a mess? And I'm not sure this 300 does it, which is what you're saying, which is what we're all saying. So
The thought was not to limit the square footage, because I think that would be arguably a taking, because you could have a property that's in the middle of a block that's fronting both streets, but fronting both streets is not more than 300 feet. But they can at least park it effectively, and they wouldn't have that same impact on both those streets as they would as a long building facing one street. That was the thought behind I believe the discussion between you and Luis was about limiting the building length on any street.
Look, I think that we need to look at it because it may be that you limit, let's say, above, if you allow 9 stories in 100 feet, above let's say the third floor, no more than X amount of continuous massing. Because what I see an issue is if you have half of the block and you have the alley in the back, because typically our depth is like 230 feet from street to street.
220 in this area, yes.
Right? So if you have a 20-foot alley, you're gonna have 100 and 100. So
Well, this area doesn't have alleys, remember? So that each lot has a depth of 110 feet. The blocks are plotted at,
I'm thinking there are
only applies to the North Ponce area.
right, but I don't wanna. I thought there were some cases that you do have an alley, but then you also had you're putting more restriction because we did a zoning change a while back that you have to put the liner units, right?
Yes, that's the requirement in the RIR.
So if I only have half of the block, I'm gonna restrict the development completely because if I gotta put a liner unit, I can't even park the building. I think that we need to really think about this and find a solution that is gonna work for properties that may not go from block to block. I think this is assuming that you have, from block to block and you have access and all. What about if you only have half of the block? Then what do you do? Right?
I think it needs to be tweaked, is what I'm hearing.
See, I am, and this is just without giving more consideration. I'm more in favor of say, okay, the envelope of the building above the third floor and just to throw a floor has to be limited because for the first 3 stories, you're gonna have, most likely you are gonna have units on the ground floor and you're gonna have the movement of in and out and you're gonna have the parking behind it. Above the third floor is when you're gonna see the continuous facade.
I think the shock for us was to see a project that was 500 feet long. One project was 500 feet long. I'm not sure how to take that back and change it, but it was a project that was 500 feet long. How is that project to be built that doesn't become?
But Benny, if that's the case,
I think this is trying to block that, right? I don't know. I'm trying to sit back. Yeah, these chairs kind of only work one way. How do they sit here for 12 hours, these commissioners? I can't sit here for 2 hours. The idea was that I think 500 feet was just a shock of a building. And I'm not sure how many buildings you've done that are 500 feet either end on Laguna or by Bird Road. I mean, 500 feet as a project is a very large project. So I think this is trying to cut project down. I'm not sure that's succeeding or successful, but it's just a building, whether you slice it this way or that way, you have 500 feet.
I think you can design a building that is 1,000, sorry.
Don't feel so bad, right?
You can design a building that's 1,000 feet long and still make it work. I mean,
correct.
A good example is Bath in England, which have rows of townhouses which are thousands of feet in length, and it's incredible. But it's all broken up. I mean, you see each unit. So I don't have a solution, but I don't have a problem with it 500 feet as long as within those 500 feet there is a break on the facade that makes it interesting for the city. It creates a great facade, but I don't have the solution.
Is it not an architectural solution that should be prescribed?
Mm-hmm.
More than just a...
By code, instead of code and architectural?
Yeah, more an architectural type solution.
Is it Giralda, the 200 block of Giralda on the north side? You know where I'm talking about?
right, across, yeah.
You know, that there's a lot of matriculation in heights, and you've got some towers that are 7 stories, some that are 4 stories. So maybe the articulation of height and surface. Again, I'm not an architect. I just visually.
Look, I will tell you, and again, I'm trying to visualize. In a residential building, more than like 150 feet from the elevator, it's like a long way.
A mile.
So you're not, 300 feet is, to me, would be like, then you're gonna have 2 buildings within the site. I'm trying to think, how far can you walk and be, to me, the problem, again, is I'm visualizing it, is above a certain, floor, because for the first 3 floors, you're gonna use the example, say, you could have 500 feet, but it could be articulated where it looks like, for the most part, you're required to have residential uses on the ground floor. So you could have movement within that facade, so it's not a continuous, 500-foot facade. As you get up, is when you have the issue, I think.
I think what the sponsor, though, is wanting is to have more moments of landscape. And you can only get that when you're limiting the building frontage on any street, because you're going to allow more what looks like side setbacks, more landscape visible from the sidewalk.
I propose that we table this until we could find maybe more specific requirement without carefully not taking away development rights from property owners.
Jennifer, what is the time sensitivity? Are they expecting the board to make a decision tonight?
I'm not sure, actually. I don't think this is relative to any project per se. I don't think this is being rushed.
I think
so. Well, the board has 3 options: approve, deny, defer. But the thing is, if you're going to defer it, what input do you want to ask that the city architect appear and see if he might have a solution? Maybe that would be an option, that requests the city architect to appear before the board to get his take on the issue. I don't know.
There are enough things in the code to provide for such things in terms of up and back,
Breaks
or green
and so
spaces,
forth.
that I think the code already does in many other ways. Why couldn't the code try to do something for this particular problem the same way it does for others? I think there are ways to accomplish what I think everybody here
I
is
think
trying to do.
those ways were incorporated in a project that brought this to your attention last
But we need to
year.
add to that, whether it's green space must be every 200 feet, and that green space must be set back 20 feet. So it could be that
That's how you can accomplish those
Yeah,
breaks.
there should be certain things that easily enough can be carved out, or I'm not trying to break up the project, but I think we do that in the code many, many different ways, and this is just another example.
And I think the Board of Architects has a lot of leverage to achieve that. I really,
I agree.
for us to further impose on something.
Here's the answer. I don't think this accomplishes everything that's tried to accomplish, and I think that by approving this, we just haven't solved everything. And I think that's
a
the folly in
consensus.
this. We can approve it, but I don't think it does the trick. If that's,
Agreed.
if everybody agrees.
Greg, let me ask you a question, if I may. There's a lot of discussion that's been done about property rights, not taking away property rights. This mainly deals with massing of properties. An owner that owns X amount of square feet, but not the entire project, are you taking away property owners' rights? If you have 10,000 square feet and there's 20 owners, let's say they're going to be massing to do this, are you taking away from each one of those owners their rights? Or is their rights only considered what their lot is, but not massed together?
It's unclear.
Because
I think that when you look at the question is what was the expectation of a property owner? It would be somewhat speculative. Well, I'm one of 30 property owners, and I might have thought at some time I could have gotten into
an agreement with my other 29 property owners to assemble a property. It may be, there might be a property owner out there that does have the sufficient property that they could take advantage of it. That's a possibility, and there might be an issue. That's a possibility.
And that's what I'm concerned, that owner, and it may be, 1, 2, or 10, that does have a large parcel that we're gonna be affecting them.
And the board could take the position, well, we think that this can be addressed architecturally, and we don't need this particular regulation. That could be your recommendation to the commission. Alternatively, you say, well, we think we need to take a further look at this, and you want to defer it and have further consideration on it. Or you could just approve it, but say there needs to be more, because this is not in and of itself going to fix the problem that you're trying to address. That might be another way to go.
Robert, Vinnie, what do you
I
guys?
think there's inherent problems to this that we're not seeing, and I think by approving this, we would leave some problems on the table. I'm just of that.
I would tell you, I'm not in favor of approving this, the way it is right now.
Not that the intent is wrong, it's just I think there's some inherent issues that we can't see because the lots are, you need 20,000 feet, and if you assemble two properties and the one doesn't work, then the other one does work, if you have.
So there's three recommendations we can give. One is to approve it as is. One is to go ahead and say, come back, or let it be done architecturally.
I think it doesn't hurt to have a conversation with the city attorney, with the city architect regarding this matter, just to get started.
Look, I'm just thinking, you said if you get two properties, 20,000 square foot property, typically it's gonna be 200 feet by
100.
By 100. So once I do that, it's 400 feet. So I am already
forced to do two 200s.
Yeah. So I think the intent is there. I just don't know that the execution we're looking for is there.
The mechanics. Do we have a motion?
I'm gonna make a motion to defer. I would like to get input from the city architect, and maybe we need to look at a way to, and from the city architect, and maybe even the board of architects, one of the representatives of the board, to see how we could make this be effective and without taking away development rights from that property owner. So I'll make a motion to defer, to try to get input from the city architect and maybe a member of the board of architects.
I'm in favor. I'll second it.
We have a second? Any discussion? No? Call the roll, please.
Julio Gabriel,
Yes.
Benny Torre,
Yes.
Chip Withers,
Yes.
Robert Behar,
Yes.
A.B. Eisenstadt.
Yes. Do we have any discussion items?
None. I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion to adjourn, a second. Everybody in favor say aye.
Aye.
And thank you for the towels or blankets.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We off the record?
You have a project.
Mr. Woodard, you have to declare.
Where did these towels?